Hi, good evening. I'll go ahead and get started. Before we begin our conversation, just wanted to share that this is a webinar format. So if you have questions, you can include your questions in the Q&A box that will be on the bottom panel of the webinar. You can also share any comments or reflections on the chat. And then if you would like to use closed captions, we have a live transcript available. You can click the CC button and either view subtitles or view full transcript. My name is Keisha Millette, and I am a staff attorney with the Fair Chance Criminal Justice Team of the North Carolina Justice Center based in Raleigh. I am joined this evening by our project director, Laura Holland, and our communications specialist, Tim Young. We are glad that you joined us this evening and are here to learn more about resolving traffic debt in North Carolina. So while folks continue to hop on the call, I want to ask a question, and I invite you to answer this question in the chat. In your opinion, why do people have driver's license suspensions because of unpaid traffic tickets? Please feel free to answer based on your experience, based on what you've heard, based on what you think may be true. And I will also make sure that question is shared in the chat for you to view. And just want to uplift a couple of the responses we're seeing now. The question again is, why do people have driver's license suspensions due to unpaid traffic tickets? Poverty, fines are unaffordable, tickets are too expensive because they probably can't afford to pay it. These are all really good responses, and you'll have an opportunity to hear more from Laura Holland and also one of our staff attorneys, Emily Meester, who will share a little bit more about what that looks like in North Carolina. So I want to introduce you briefly to the North Carolina Justice Center and our team. If you are not familiar with our organization, the mission of the North Carolina Justice Center is to eliminate poverty in North Carolina by ensuring that every household in the state has access to the resources, services, and fair treatment that it needs in order to achieve economic security. So with the work that we do in at the North Carolina Justice Center, we have projects that focus on a variety of issues that relate to poverty, including health, workers' rights, and many others. And the Fair Chance Criminal Justice Team is one of those projects. The Fair Chance Criminal Justice Team partners with impacted people, congregations, concerned community members, advocacy organizations, and decision makers to change local and state policies and practices to make the criminal justice system more fair from arrest to reentry. And part of what we are doing today is working to make sure that folks who need to and want to learn more about what can be done to resolve criminal justice debt related to traffic debt in North Carolina can have access to that information. As you have seen already, this webinar is being recorded, and portions of the webinar will be made available online. It is also being live streamed. So I encourage you to continue if you have additional reflections on the question that I asked earlier, and I will go ahead and transition to our first polling question of the evening. And I'll pass it over to Timothy Young.
Hey everyone, so I just want to go ahead and launch a poll. This poll will help us kind of gauge your familiarity with the suspension process and help us understand what your situation is. The questions include if you yourself have a suspended driver's license or risk of suspension, or someone you know has a risk of suspension, or you're just here about information about that suspension process. And so during that time, we're going to show you a video that is going to kind of encapsulate a lot of what the work we do involving fines and fees and driver's license suspension. So I'm going to go ahead and cue that video up for us. Okay.
The biggest problem you've probably never heard of affects over 10 million people in the United States, and it costs taxpayers millions of dollars. Because of it, people lose their jobs. It disproportionately affects people of color, but it's bad for us all. And it needs to stop now.
Hi, my name is Celeste. I live in Rochester, New York. When I was 16, I got a couple of minor traffic tickets that, because I was living on my own, I couldn't afford to pay. Okay, later, I'm 21 and pregnant with my daughter. Driving to work, and I get caught in a speed trap. I was pulled over and found out then that my driver's license was suspended. I owed over $1,000 all from these old tickets. I was arrested for driving on a suspended license and spent 15 days in jail. Pregnant. I'm out now, but barely have enough money for rent and groceries, let alone traffic fines. And now I don't have a license either. Because I can't legally drive my daughter to school, I have to take her on the bus, then take the bus to work, then take the bus back to school to pick her up. Altogether, it's over 3 hours.
In 44 states, driver's licenses are restricted for failure to pay fines and fees. Without a license, you can't get to work, can't support your family, can't take your kids to school or your mom to the doctor. All because you can't afford to pay increasingly steep fines and fees.
Hey, my name's Kevin, and to get to school, I have to drive over the Midpoint Bridge. And I went over the bridge 3 times before I found out that the credit card linked to my SunPass account had expired. 3 tolls, $6. And I didn't know about the tickets because they didn't put my apartment number on the notice, so it was returned. And one day I was driving to work, got pulled over, the officer told me that my driver's license was suspended, and I was charged with a crime, driving with a suspended license. When I tried to get the tickets taken care of and my license back, I found out it was going to cost me almost $1,000. Fortunately, my parents could help me out and I got my license back, but if my parents didn't have the money to help me, I would have gone to jail.
This isn't about removing dangerous drivers from the road, it's about criminalizing poverty. And rather than making us more safe, it makes us less safe.
My name is Susan. I'm a district attorney in Tennessee. My job is to keep our community safe. Law enforcement and prosecutors should be spending their time on real crime, not the crime of being poor. And when we suspend people's licenses, they can't get insurance, which everyone who drives needs to have. You want your DA's office to focus on those individuals that are destroying lives. And I've never heard people tell me they're afraid of someone driving on a suspended license because they couldn't pay their fines and fees.
Suspensions are hurting individuals, their families, and our communities. Now you know about the problem. Work with us to solve it. Find out more at freetodrive.org.
This video helps illustrate the nature of the problem with fines and fees, and particularly with driver's license suspensions due to unpaid traffic tickets. I will now pass it over to Laura Holland to talk a little bit more about fines and fees in North Carolina.
Yes, thank you, Keisha and Tim. That video was very important because it set the landscape for driver's license suspension on a national scale. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to spend about 10 minutes just talking about North Carolina particularly, and the way that debt-based driver's license suspension impacts North Carolina. And when I say debt-based driver's license suspension, that's a term I'm going to use throughout. But when I say that, what I'm talking about is people who have suspended driver's license, or situations where a driver's license is suspended because of unpaid traffic-related fines and fees, or in other words, an unpaid traffic ticket. All right, so North Carolina is one of the 24 states in the United States that still suspends a person's driver's license because of unpaid driver's license for unpaid traffic tickets. And in our state, our suspension is automatic and it's an indefinite suspension. So when we talk about automatic suspension, what we refer to is the requirement under law for the DMV to suspend a driver's license as soon as they get information from the courts that the person has not paid their traffic ticket within the given amount of time, which is usually about 3 months. And the law that sets this out, just for your information, is a statute. The statute is 2024.1. This same statute also requires for the suspension to be indefinite. And so what we mean when we say the word indefinite is that once a driver's license is suspended, that it remains suspended until that individual resolves the ticket by either paying it off or going back into court and entering into an arrangement with the court to do an alternative to payment, such as reducing the debt or completely eliminating the debt, or even sometimes a payment plan might be an alternative to payment that will get someone's driver's license to come out of suspension mode. So we received data earlier this year that kind of illustrates the issue of driver's license suspension in our state. Currently, based on the data that we received in January, there are about 470,000 cases that are leading to long-term driver's license suspension in our state. And these cases represent more than 300,000 people who have at least one debt-based driver's license suspension on their record. And if we look at those numbers, one thing that we immediately see is that it is a common experience for people to have more than one suspension on their record. And the multiple suspensions make it that much harder for the persons to get their driver's license back, right? And this is because the multiple suspensions are caused because of the cycle that is created when someone's driver's license is suspended and they're not able to pay the debt. And so because of that, on average in our state, we see individuals suspended for debt-based driver's license suspension for more than 8.5 years, which is a significant amount of time not to be able to freely move around in this state. And one thing that we know that is for certain, similar to the rest of the criminal legal system, is that debt-based driver's license suspension disproportionately impacts individuals and families of color and low-income people. And this is data that we received again at the beginning of the year that shows us that about 50% of the individuals who are currently suspended for debt-based suspensions are identified as people of color. And because we know that this issue has to do with debt and the ability to pay the debt, that people who are living in poverty are the ones who are impacted by it the most because they have the most difficulty paying the ticket to avoid the driver's license suspension. And the reason it matters and the reason that we are here today is because we know that not being able to have a driver's license, especially because of debt in this state, has real life impacts on individuals. Similar to the nationwide issue that we heard about in the video, in North Carolina, not having a driver's license can be a major barrier to meaningful opportunities. And so these are some quotes that we received over the last 5 years as we talk to individuals who have faced driver's license suspension. And we immediately found out that it impacts a person's ability to get a job, to keep their job. It impacts where people can live because it mostly requires people to either live near the bus line or to live near someone who can give them a ride. And it also just generally impacts an individual's ability to care for themselves and their family. And so understanding the problem, understanding the impact it had on individuals, one of the things that we have been working on for years is we're working on ways to challenge debt-based driver's license suspension in our state and to help people overcome those suspensions, prevent the suspensions, and get back on their feet. So there's a number of methods that we have taken to challenge driver's license suspension. But one of the things that we want to lift up today is we created, along with the ACLU of North Carolina and the Southern Poverty Law Center, a website, Resolve Traffic Debt NC, that provides information and resources that individuals can use to help themselves, to get back into court and ask the judge to give them an alternative to payment to either prevent their driver's license from being suspended or to end the driver's license suspension. We definitely welcome you all to visit this website because we see from the poll that a number of people have either experienced or are experiencing suspension. And so you can go on this website and find information about how to fill out one of the court forms. The court form is called the Request for Relief from Fines and Fees, or we also call it Form 415. So it has the website has a link to that form and has information about how you can fill out that form and then take it to the courthouse and start the process to get back in front of the judge to ask for relief from the driver's license suspension. So I'm gonna stop here because I just want to give a quick overview of the issue in North Carolina and pass it to the next presentation where you will hear from my colleague, Emily Meester, who will walk you through how to fill out the form and present it to the court on your own. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Emily Meester, and I am a staff attorney with the North Carolina Justice Center. This video is about how to fill out a Form 415, which is also known as a request for relief from fines, fees, and other monetary obligations. It is used to request the waiver of fines and fees owed on a previously disposed ticket, most often in traffic cases. Today, we're going to go through just how to fill it out online. The first thing you want to do is you want to type in the case number for the case that you are requesting relief on. So, for instance, that's going to be typically a 2-digit year, so 00, and then it's going to be either CR, CRS, or IF. For this example, I'm just using CR, and then I'm just going to type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The important thing to know about this is that you need to complete and submit a form for each individual case number that you are requesting relief. You cannot combine case numbers on a single form. Next, you're going to check the box regarding whether it's in district or superior court. If your letters in your case number are CR or IF, then that is district court. If your letters in your case number are CRS, then that is superior court. Next, you want to come over here and fill in the county for this case number. So for this example, I'm just going to type in Wake. Next, you're going to tab down. You're going to fill in the name of the defendant, Joe Smith, in this case. You're going to then complete the defendant's telephone number, date of birth, and the street address. This information is very helpful in that any notice regarding hearing is going to be mailed to this street address. If you do not have an address, then you can check the box for I am homeless. You're going to go over here to the attorney box, and you're going to check the box that says I am self-represented. That means that you are proceeding on your own without the assistance of an attorney. Next, you're going to look down here in the employment income. They're asking for the information in a per month status, so not weekly or biweekly, but monthly. They're also asking you to list your employer. There's also a checkbox here if you are unemployed. So, for instance, let's say that you work for PetSmart. You're going to type PetSmart in here, and then you're going to go over here and you're going to type in how much money you make per month. So, for instance, $1,500. Then you hit tab, and it adds the 0.00 for cents. The next box is other income per month. This, for instance, is rental income. If you own a house that you rent to another person and that person pays you rent, but Other options are spouse's income and gifts and financial support from family. For instance, if you are married and your spouse works, this is the portion where you put that. So let's say that your spouse also works at PetSmart. Then we can add PetSmart and spouse in parentheses, and then you want to add your spouse's income. We'll say for this example, $1,000 per month. The next question is, how many people, including yourself, does this income support? So when you're calculating that number, you count yourself as 1. Then you add to that number the additional people that supports. For instance, if it's you and your spouse and 2 children, 1, 2, then you have a total of 4. You, your spouse, and your 2 children. So then you want to add that number to that block. The next question is, what is the total value of cash, of your cash on hand and in bank accounts? This means how much cash do you have that you have now and in a bank account? Let's say, for purposes of this example, $50. The next question is, what is the total value of all real property you own? Real property means houses, apartments, condos, things that you own, not things that you rent, but things that you own. This does not include a house where you pay a mortgage. So we will put 0 in that box. The next question is, what is the total value of all major personal property you own? It says parentheses, vehicles or jewelry. The important distinction in this question is that most people do not own their vehicles. Most people are still paying or making a monthly payment on that vehicle. So for instance, if you purchased your vehicle from a car lot and you financed that vehicle and you have to pay a certain amount per month towards that vehicle, then that means that you do not own that vehicle for the purposes of this question. So we're going to put 0 over here. Next question is rent or mortgage that you pay monthly. So how much do you pay for rent or mortgage for the residence that you live in? And that includes if you live with another person, perhaps a roommate, and you only pay a portion. Perhaps you pay $200 and your roommate pays $200. Or perhaps you pay the entire rent yourself. So you want to put that amount in this slot. So we'll put $750. And then this question says, next one is child care or child support payments that you pay monthly. So if you have a child support obligation that you're required to pay on every month, then you want to put that number here. If in the alternative or in addition, you pay child care expenses, then you want to put that number here. So for instance, say that you have a child, that child lives with you, or in this example, Joe Smith and his spouse live together with 2 children. Say one of those children is school age and one of those children is in child care, and they pay $500 a month for the child care for the youngest child. So 500 goes in this box. Now, the next portion is a checkbox section. It says, I receive the following public assistance. Your choices are TANF, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, Supplemental Security Income, also known as SSI, Social Security Disability Insurance, known as SSDI, SNAP or food stamps, or veterans benefits. In the next column, you have a series of statements. If any of these apply to you, then check them. First one is, I have been homeless in the past 6 months. Second is, I have been incarcerated on an active sentence in the past 6 months. Third is, I am under 18. And fourth is, I am a full-time student. So for instance, in our example, let's say that Joe Smith and his family receive food stamps and that he or his spouse were incarcerated on an active sentence in the past 6 months. So we're going to check both of those boxes. Now, the next box states, use the space below to provide any additional information about other circumstances the court should consider when evaluating your ability to pay, such as a disability or illness, a change in work hours, or other support obligations or significant expenses. In this portion, I would recommend that you include any educational debt that you have, such as student debt for prior education. I would recommend that you also include any medical debt. So if you have hospital bills from a previous medical crisis and that debt is outstanding, I would recommend you include that here as well. I would also recommend that you include how much you pay for utilities. That includes your cell phone. I would also recommend how much you pay for transportation. So in that block, you would include car insurance, how much you pay for car insurance. If you have a car payment, how much you pay for your car payment, and how much you would spend on gas or fuel. Lastly, I would recommend that you include information here regarding if you have child support obligation, if you typically pay child support, but for instance, you are in arrears, meaning you owe old child support. I would include that information here as well. The court typically would rather have your money going to pay child support arrears than paying court debt. In addition, if you have children, if you have dependents, and you do not receive child support for any of those dependents, I would recommend you also include that information here. What you're trying to do is paint as thorough as possible a picture of your financial obligations to give the court the ability to make the determination whether or not you can pay the debt that's accrued. Next, we'll scroll down to page 2. The top portion is the request or motion. This is the portion where you ask the court for what you want. So your checkbox, it's a checkbox thing. Your first box is that the court allow relief from all costs, fines, fees, and restitution to the extent allowed by law. The second box is that I be given until at least, and then you fill in the date here, to pay any imposed monetary obligations. And then your third option is a payment plan requiring a total money payment of no more than X dollars per month. Your first box is if you're asking the court to remit all of the money that you owe. Your second box is if you want to pay the money that you owe, but you need more time to pay it. And your third box is if you would like a payment plan and you can determine how much money you can afford to pay. So perhaps you look at your financial circumstances, you believe that you can pay $20 per month and you want to pay your debt, then you would fill in $20 per month here and check the third box. Then you're going to date and print your name here, and then you're going to sign your name here. Now, the important part of this is that this document needs to be notarized. What that means is that do not sign this document until you are in front of a notary. You need to take this completed but unsigned document and a valid photo ID with you to a notary. Notaries are typically found in banks and UPS stores. You can also sometimes find them in attorneys' offices. Once there, the notary will review your valid photo ID and then witness you as you sign the document. Then the notary will complete this portion of the document. Now, this can also be signed at the clerk's office. So you don't have to do it. You don't have to necessarily go to a bank or a UPS store. If you're going to file it in court, you can actually take it to the clerk's office and the clerk can witness you signing this document. The next portion of this document is a certificate of service section. This document, because it is a motion in a previously disposed case, requires that the district attorney receive a copy of this document. So typically, you're going to go to the district attorney's office first. So you're going to get it signed in the clerk's office or with a notary. Then you will go to the district attorney's office. You're going to want to take 2 to 3 copies of this document with you. I generally would recommend 3 copies. So you go to the clerk, sign it, go to the district attorney's office, and serve them with a copy. They will fill out the appropriate box, which can be leaving a copy with an employee of the district attorney, and then the person can print their name here. It can be by mailing a copy. I would generally not recommend that for these types of motions because it is a relatively new process. You can, and then once you have served the district attorney's office with their copy, you're going to date, you're going to write your name here as the name of the person serving, because you are serving the district attorney's office. Then you are going to sign the document here, and you're going to check defendant. Then you're going to take the 2 copies that remain, because 1 copy will stay with the district attorney's office. You're going to take the 2 copies that remain back down to the clerk's office to file them. There is no fee when you're filing this document. So the 2 copies will go to the clerk's office. They will file stamp both copies, and the second 1 copy stays with the clerk, and 1 copy should come back to you as documentation that it has been filed. Different clerk's offices have different processes on when these are scheduled. Sometimes the clerk will give you the date that it is going to be calendared at the time you file it. So you file it and they will say, this case will be calendared on August 6th. Make sure you're here. You will make sure you will need to appear in court on that court date so that the judge can review your request. In other offices, in other clerk's offices, they will accept your form and then they will mail you documentation of when the hearing gets scheduled. That is why it is so important that the address that is listed here at the top of the form is a correct address. It is also very important that if your address changes, that you make sure to contact the clerk's office to update the address that they have for you on this form. Once everything is filled out, served on the district attorney's office, and filed in the clerk's office, then you will be required to appear in court on your scheduled court date so that the judge can review your motion and make a decision. Judges may have questions about the information that you have provided, so it is very important that you not miss that court date.
So Emily Meester provided details on how you can fill out the CR 415 form for relief from fines and fees and other monetary obligations, and also shared details about how you may be able to file that form. We recognize that you may have some additional questions now. We will be transitioning now to the Q&A, and I will hand it over to Tim. Please feel free to include any additional questions that you have at this time.
Thank you, Keisha. Yeah, one question we got was, does it have to be the same county you have the ticket in? We did answer that. That answer is yes. You have to file it in the same county you got the ticket in. But yeah, we have the Q&A section open to kind of keep that open to any other kind of specific questions you might have about your situation.
While we have additional questions coming in, I can go ahead to some additional information that may be useful to you and also do a little bit of review if that works for y'all. So just to recap what we went over today, you heard from us about debt-based driver's license suspensions and how you can complete a CR 415 form that is also called a motion for relief from fines, fees, and other monetary obligations. You also heard from our colleague Laura Holland about kind of the state of driver's license suspensions due to outstanding traffic tickets or other criminal justice debt and in North Carolina. And we are continuing to have you share your questions on how to get relief. So as you already saw in the chat and as folks had shared earlier, you can get more details about how to fill out this form on the website resolvetrafficdebtnc.org. That link has already been shared in the chat. You may be trying to figure out exactly where to go from here. So I just want to review over some options, go over some options that are available to you if you are in a position of trying to get your fines and fees waived or reduced, or if someone you know is in that position. We will also, after this webinar, follow up with an email that includes much of the information that was shared earlier and that I will share now. So as I believe was mentioned earlier, we are not providing direct legal representation on for anyone who may be filing the CR 415 form, but we may be able to answer specific questions about filling out the form. You can email us at fairchanceproject@ncjustice.org, which can be shared in the chat, or join our upcoming office hours on August 17th at 6 p.m. So if you need a little time to think about what you've heard today and look over the form and look over what you may need to complete, you can still join us at that later date for office hours to get some more specific questions answered, or you can send us an email directly. As I mentioned, we are not able to represent you in court on the 415 forms. There are other ways that you can also get involved or learn more about local advocacy that's happening. There are district attorneys across the state that Laura described that have mass debt relief programs in place. To date, there are more than 10 district attorneys who have helped thousands of people in their districts. And we have a resource that can be available for you if you are interested in advocating in your county for mass debt relief, which would look like district attorneys being able to ensure that people who have outstanding court costs or traffic debt that meet certain qualifications or requirements in terms of what is there are able to get relief without having to actually go into court directly. So we can share that traffic debt toolkit as well, and I'll make sure that that link is passed along to you in the chat, and we'll follow up with the email information in the email. Another form of local advocacy is for you to advocate to your county commissioner, city council, town alderman, to budget funds for a dedicated driver's license restoration program. Currently, there are dedicated programs in several counties across the state, including Durham County, which has a DEER program, Orange County Restoration Legal Counsel program, and Forsyth County DRIVE program. And most recently, New Hanover County has approved funding for a dedicated driver's license restoration program. So there may be opportunities for something similar in your county if you do not live in one of these counties. And we will share some resources that share some of the programs that exist already. There's also, if you are someone you know may be interested in advocating for statewide law change, and you believe, as we do, that you should not have to deal with having your driver's license suspended because of unpaid traffic tickets. There are ways to get involved and support other statewide advocacy efforts. You can email fairchanceproject@ncjustice.org to stay up to date about those efforts. And we'll see if there's some additional questions or comments. I'll turn it back over to Tim.
Hey everyone, I'm just going to go ahead and launch one more poll, and it might look familiar. This is going to be kind of mirroring the poll you got earlier. With the question is, how confident are you now in resolving debt-based forms like suspension? So in comparison to earlier, do you feel more confident, less confident to be able to handle any debt-based suspension now? Cool. It looks like results are seem to be trending towards more confidence. So that's something we would like to hear, that that this webinar and this information was useful to you to help you out with your situation. Yeah. I'll turn back to Yuki. Yuki, should you close this out?
Sure. Thank you. And I see that we do have a comment here. Oh, go ahead, Laura, if you want to answer.
Oh, I just wanted to answer a question out loud that is in the chat. So the question was, is there any way that the full transcript of this conversation would be available? And we said, yes, it would be available, but I also want to note that the part of the program that went through filling out the form, so filling out the ALC CR 415 form that Emily Meester gave, will be available on the Resolve Traffic Debt website shortly after the end of this program. And you're muted, Keisha.
Thank you. I also just want to, this may have already been answered, but just to respond out loud to the question that says, I now live out of state. It sounds like I'll need to return to NC to go through with this process. Yes, all the forms have to be filed with the local courts. You may want to reach out to the clerk's office directly to see if they accept any mail-in filings. Any resources to turn. And just to emphasize, I think we already got an answer here from Tim on the process. Again, we really encourage you to visit that website, resolvetrafficdebtnc.org, for additional information. And you can also attend our upcoming office hours on August 17th. And that link is provided in the chat. Just want to make sure there are no additional questions before we hop off for the evening. And I will also share the resources that I mentioned earlier for you to view, and there will be an opportunity to look at those also, to get those through our email as well. Okay. Let's share those additional resources one more time. I do recognize that if you are currently dealing with this traffic debt, that it can be very frustrating and a lot to deal with. And we do hope that you're able to get your debt resolved or get the assistance that you need as soon as possible. We also encourage you to consider whether your local district attorney might be willing to do a mass debt relief effort that we think could be very beneficial for you and others living in your county. And also that locally county commissioners, city council, or town aldermen may be willing to do another, to also do a driver's license restoration program. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening. We will work on making sure that full transcript is available, and we also will have the video describing the process available on that website. Again, that is resolvetrafficdebtnc.org. Thank you again for joining. Thank you for filling out the polling questions, and we look forward to hearing from you and hope that you all are able to attend to all that you need to. Thank you so much. Have a good night.